Hi, I'm Lester Knutsen, producer of the Informix TechTalks by the IIUG, and today I'm going to give this presentation on using Informix 4GL and TermCap settings. This is something I did years ago for the Washington Area Informix User Group in 1993, and I did an article in the newsletter about it. And over the years, questions keep coming up. And recently I've had several questions come up about 4GL and how do you set function keys. So I thought I would bring it up and do it again. This is most of this is actually based on a lab for the Informix 4GL course I've done over the years. So we're going to dive right into that in just a minute. So we're going to talk about Informix 4GL and how it uses the Unix Termcap file to display colors, line boxes, and function keys. And most of this is going to be a lab where I'm going to show you step by step how to do it. And you'll be able to download the example files I use from my website. Now, just a couple of guidelines. Even though this webcast is pre-recorded, please mute your line so there's no background noise. If you have questions, use the chat button to ask the question. I will be monitoring the chat and will try and answer when I can. So, why do you want to know about using TermCap settings for 4GL? Here is a simple example. This is the same program run on two different screens, each using a separate TermCap file. The TermCap file can make all the difference in the world. The program is exactly the same. The program on the left doesn't understand how to draw lines. It doesn't understand how to draw colors, and it doesn't understand what the function keys are. The program on the right understands line drawing characters, it understands color, and it understands a function key. And the difference between these two 4GL programs is not the code, but it's the TermCap file. So in this lab that I'm going to include, there are going to be two 4GL programs, and I'll show you where to download them from my website in just a minute. One is called 3windows.4gl, one's called TermTest.4gl, and then I'm going to give you an example TermCap file, and then I'm going to give you the instructions for Lab 8 from my class on how to set up for it. Now, 4GL uses the TermCap file for display attributes and appearance. And look at your release notes because that's where you will find out what the capabilities are of your version of Informix. It does change with versions. There are some versions that use terminfo. But it also requires that two environment variables be set. One is called term, which identifies the type of terminal you're running, and the second is TermCap, which identifies the TermCap file that contains the instructions on when you say red, what to display, or when you say draw a line, what to display. That comes from the TermCap file. 4GL just says draw a line or draw a window with a line around it, and it then has to go to the TermCap file to figure out how to do that. So the capabilities are how to display things on the screen, how to display color if your terminal has color. If you're on a WISE-50, you won't have color at all. How to draw nice straight lines instead of dashes, and then how the function keys work. Here's an example of a TermCap file that has a problem. And the problem here is this TermCap file doesn't know how to draw the lines. So it incorrectly draws Q's and X's around the border of the window. Here's another example of a TermCap file problem. Again, it doesn't know how to draw lines, so it draws these funny block characters around the borders of the window. Here is what a TermCap file looks like, and don't worry, I'm going to go over this in the lab part of this in more detail. The first part of the TermCap is where you identify the name of your terminal. That's this line right here. This says V1 Xterm, it's a VT100, and it's a DEC VT100. Any of those names will work. The second part are the basic terminal capabilities. This is how to clear a line, how to go to the end of the line, how to backspace, underline, those basic functions of a terminal. Then we have the function keys, and function key F1 is K0, function key F2 is K1. A little bit confusing, but that's the way it's been from years ago. Then we have the graphic line drawing characters, and if they aren't there, it will use dashes to draw lines. And then we have color, and if colors are not there, it won't display anything in color. But this is just an example of a 4GL program, TermCap program. Now, as I said, if you go to Advanced Data Tools under Presentations, I'll have the examples for you to download. Should be there by the end of this webcast, if not before. And with that, let me dive in. The rest of this is going to be a hands-on lab that I did for my class, showing you how to do these different capabilities. So let's proceed. Hi, welcome to Lab 8. This is actually a new lab that I don't do in the normal course, but I decided to add for this special course. And we're going to talk about the appearance of your 4GL programs in your terminal screen. And the appearance depends on two things. One is the capabilities of the terminal emulation software you're using, or if you're using an old WISE 50 or WISE 60, the physical limitations of that terminal. But if you're using SSH, an SSH client, there'll be capabilities of that SSH client that will affect how 4GL programs are displayed. The second part of this is a TermCap file you're using. And for this lab, I'm going to do it actually twice. The first part of it I'm going to do with my standard on a Mac using the Mac OS terminal. So if I go here to terminal, about terminal, you'll see that I'm using the built-in terminal from Apple here. I'll show you in the second part of this how to use it. Do this with PuTTY and with the built-in SSH terminal on Windows 10. So let's dive right in. I'm going to SSH to my machine, and I got to type my name right. And always I have to set my environment. Remember, do a dot and run whatever it is to set your environment. And I'm going to CD to the lab directory. After I've CD'd to the lab directory, I'm going to make a directory for the lab. And I'm going to CD into that lab. Now I'm going to copy from my downloads the material for this lab, and you should have 3 files: a TermCap 4GL class, a TermTest 4GL program, and a 3 Windows 4GL program. And we're going to go through these in this lab. So the 3 windows 4GL program, let's take a look at that. This is a very simple window program that opens up 3 windows. And it puts the windows at, the first one goes at row 10, column 30. Row 5, column 10. The second one goes at row 5, column 45. And the third one at row 18, column 25. And they're all 30 columns wide, 10 rows deep. And then we go through a while loop. And in the while loop, there's a prompt. Now, the key part of this is there's a while loop that is true forever until you press Q. And there's a prompt that asks you which window do you want to make. And then based on what you answer, it's going to make that window active. Now 4GL, we're going to have 3 windows open here, but only one can be active at a time. And this is a limitation of terminal-based programs like 4GL. It's not like a Windows system where you can have 3 or 4 windows active at the same time. They'll all be open, they'll all be there, but one of them will be active. And the active window will have the prompt in it. As you will see, as I change the active window the prompt is in will change. So let's go down and compile this program. And got to exit out of VI. And let's just take a look at what happens when we run it. And you can see I have my 3 windows, they're all the same size. The prompt is in window 3 because that's the active window. If I put the number 2 in here, the prompt now is moved to Windows 2 because that's the active window. If I say Windows 3, it's back in Windows 3. If I say 1, it's in Windows 1. And if I hit Q for quit, the program ends. You can run the same thing with the rapid development system. I'm going to copy that line in and compile it and run it, and it will work exactly the same. Again, I'm going to make the active window 1 by pressing 1, and the prompt's moved up to window 1. I'm going to make the active window 2, and the prompt's moved up to window 2. In 4GL programs, you see this a lot of times where you'll have a lookup screen. When you make the lookup window active, you can't enter data in the other window. Now you have to return from your active window and pass data back to the current window in 4GL for that to work. Now I want to show you one other thing about Windows. And we're going to edit this program, and I'm going to say change current window. So I've made the prompt a little bit bigger, and if I compile it, and this is whether I'm using the rapid development system or the C compiler, it doesn't give me any errors. But when I run it, it gives me an error saying the prompt message is too long to fit in the window. So these are runtime errors that you will get. If a form doesn't fit, if a prompt doesn't fit, that's not a compile error, that's a runtime error that you will get. So to fix that, you have to go back and make it shorter. And I'm just basically going to take out what I added, recompile it, and now it works again. So the second point here I want to make is window size errors are runtime errors. You won't know about them until you run a program. And that can be embarrassing where you have a long prompt or a long display thing and it's way down in your code. It opens up fine the first time, but later down in your logic, if you display something that doesn't fit, you will get a runtime error. Now, does your screen look like this with the smooth boxes or like mine does here with these lines? Let's pause for a minute. So this is how your 4GL windows could look like, and this is part of what this chapter is about. Is you could have nice line drawing characters. Most terminals have line drawing capabilities built into them. You just need to figure out how to turn that on with TermCap settings and with maybe your terminal emulation software. They have to both be turned on, and that's part of what I'm going to do now is show you how to do this for an X-term. So you can get terminals like this, or you can get terminals like this. So let's take a look at my second program, which is TermTest. And this is a program I wrote a long time ago in '93 to test TermCap entries for new terminals. And I've used it over the years, and it basically, well, let's just compile it. And then we'll go through what it does. So I'm going to compile it. And when I run it, it says, okay, based on your terminal capabilities in TermCap, here's what I can show you. And it's not showing me anything very pretty or spectacular. If I go back in the lab, I've got an example here where I've got it modified and showing it in what I call dark mode, where it's on a black screen with white characters and the colors are all working and nice lines. I also have it with default mode, which is a black and white, but you notice the underline works here. Here the underline is not working. This is what we're seeing here. This is the default mode. So let's try it with my other window here and see what happens. And this is showing it to me in nice lines with colors, with underline, and the other key thing with TermCap entries is function keys. Now on my Mac, to get a function key to work, I have to press the function button and then the function key. And you see it just said I pressed F1. If I press the function and F2, function F3, function F4, function F5, I'm sorry, 6, function F7 doesn't work, 8 works, 9 works, 10 works, 11 clears the screen. Let me bring everything back. So there's some function keys you can't override on your terminal, but there's some that you can. And let's go to the other window. And here if I press function F1, it just beeps at me. And F2 ended. So this TermCap in this window is not set up to display function keys, color, or lines. In this window, it's set up to display function keys, colors, and lines. And so how do you get that? Now, you may have, and this would be great, if you're run this on your system and you see something like this with colors and lines, that means somebody's done some good work on your system and you've got a TermCap that is set up really well. But if you don't, we're going to talk about how to go about doing that. And let me scroll down here. Let's take a look at the TermTest program. And it's a very simple program. It opens a window with a border, and the border is what tells 4GL to draw the line. And I put the prompt line on the last line, and I'm going to display at line 1, row 7, a bit of text here. And then I display at line 1 to 12, 1 is reverse, 2 is bold, 3 is dim, 4 is underline, 5 is white, yellow. Let's see how it looks here. Is that working right? 1 is reverse, 2 is bold. Bold on this is showing up in a different color. 3 is dim, that's showing up in a different color. 4 is showing up underline. Again, this will depend on your terminal capabilities. If you're on a black and white terminal, you're not going to see color, no matter how hard you try. But if you're on a color terminal, you should be able to get the colors working. And then I have a test for function keys. And I'm doing an on-key command, and when you press F1 to F10, it will tell you that you press that function key. If you press Q or quit, then it will exit. And so that's what this program is doing. Now, run this. You can run it with both the C compiler and the 4GL compiler, and let's see how it works. And I'm going to pause now and let you run it. And if you're watching this on video, you might pause the video and just see how it works. Okay, now we're going to dive into TermCap, and echo your $term. That will tell you what kind of terminal you're using. I'm on an Xterm, and echo your $termcap. That will tell you what termcap you're using. Now, most modern Unix systems use something called terminfo, and there are some versions of Informix that use terminfo. But Informix 751, if you go and look at the release notes, and I'm just going to go over here and go to opt, Informix 4GL, release, and ENUS 333. These are the release notes for the version I have. And look at your machine notes, and this will tell you about the version of Informix that comes with your system, and what it was compiled on and what it's set up for. Now, and it gives you some recommendations for TermCap. This version does use TermCap, and it needs certain library files to be installed for it to work. Your version, if you're using an older version, may not use TermCap. It may use terminfo. There's a couple of versions that use terminfo, so they may work differently than this. But if you use TermCap, I'm going to talk about how to set up and change the TermCap file. Now, I have an example TermCap file with the class notes. Oh, I'm in the wrong directory. Okay, got to get back to your lab directory. I have an example TermCap. Oh, and before I do that, you can view your $termcap. It's an ASCII file, and this is the one that comes with Informix. And if I search here for Xterm, this is the settings it's using for the xterm. And that's a good starting place. But I've modified it, and what I'm going to show you now is my modifications to TermCap. Here is my modified TermCap, and there are three things I've modified. The ZA attribute, which is this attribute right here, controls the color. And this is where you need to get your terminal manual out and figure out what it uses for colors. This is what I've found works for an xterm. This ZA line works really good for xterm. The F0 to F9 are function keys F1 to F10. So down here I have my function keys, and I'm going to show you how to test your function keys in just a minute. But this is where you put in so that Informix 4GL knows when you press F1, it's going to be looking for these characters here, an escape OP. F2, remember, it starts with K0 is F1, K1 is function key 2. It's going to look for escape Q, OQ, and so on down the line. And the third thing here is the graphics characters. These are the box drawing characters for xterm. And again, your terminal may be different. If you're on a WISE-60, it will be very different from this. A VT102 might be different from this, and so you need to look it up. Now, I've got two modes here, and I want to show you the difference between them. The only difference in these two modes is the ZA capabilities. This second one is what I call dark mode, and I'll show you what that looks like in just a minute. But it basically makes the background of the screen black and a white font, whereas this leaves the screen at whatever color it was at to begin with. I also have an original ANSI term that I used years ago. It doesn't work very well, particularly the graphics line, because that's changed quite a bit with terminals. But if you use a PC program that uses the PC ANSI terminal graphics, this may work. This was designed with the old, I don't know if you remember, in '93 when PC and SCO consoles, SCO Unix had a console system that used these colors for it. So let's try it out. And this is my recommendation. Anytime you want to work with TermCap, do not modify a working TermCap. Always make a copy of it into your local directory, and always work with that copy until you're sure it's 100% debugged, and then you can update your master TermCap. So I'm going to say export term equal TermCap equal, and I'm going to say pwd in back quotes, so I want my current directory, and I want the termcap.4GL class. Let's make sure. And it found it. So now I'm pointing at that TermCap file. Now, if I run TermTest, look what it does. I'm seeing the solid line, I'm seeing the colors, and my function keys work like they did in the other window. So that's very simply how you set up a TermCap. And if you have a Xterm that you're using, and I'm going to show you an example after this with PuTTY and an example with the Windows built-in SSH client to take a look at that. Now, dark mode. I want to show you this. I'm going to say term equal x term d. This is going to run this in dark mode. And you see now the screen goes black with a white front. I used to run different colors. You know, you could set different backgrounds and things like that. And it's all very doable here. Let's run 3 windows. And again, I have my 3 windows, and they work just like they did before. So editing your TermCap is very complicated. And I'm going to pause a minute and show you these examples on Windows, and then we will take a look at some other resources. Okay, I'm going to show you a quick example of what this looks like on a PC. And here I'm running PuTTY. And let me make this a little bit bigger and a little bit deeper. There. So I'm going to log in. Same Tiger machine. I'm going to run my Informix 4GL environment variable. I'm going to CD to lab 08. And just as a start, let's run 3 windows. And there I have my 3 windows like we had before with the square lines. And if I run TermTest, I have my TermTest. So this is the default for PuTTY and 4GL. Now, PuTTY does have one nice thing, is it can also emulate a VT100. So I'm going to emulate a VT102. I'm going to say export term equal VT102. And now if I run TermTest, it also comes up like that. Let me go back to setting my term to be an Xterm and run TermTest again. It works like that. Let's see if the function keys work. So the function keys all, the first 4 all seem to work. Now let's change to our local TermCap file here in this directory. So I'm going to say export TermCap equal, and in back quotes pwd, because that's the current directory. And then I'm going to say termcap.4GL class. And it completely doesn't understand this TermCap file, which I think is kind of interesting. And this is oftentimes what you will see when you have the graphic characters all wrong. So I just wanted to give that as an example of what can go wrong with this, particularly with the graphics characters. Now this is using my ANSI term setting, and if I try, So I just wanted to show you that every terminal is different, and the settings you get will depend on what emulation software you're using and what you're trying to accomplish with it. Both of these are having problems with the line drawing characters. Now, to get the line drawing to work with PuTTY, there's one setting you have to set. And let me show you what that is. If I open up PuTTY, and I'm going to load my Tiger 3, and if you go under Window, under Translation, there's a setting called Enable VT100 Line Drawing even in UTF-8 mode. That has to be checked to get the line drawing to work. If you're using another terminal emulation product, Google it and see if there is something you have to set like this to get line drawing to work. So now I'm going to open PuTTY and log in as Lester and get my environment set. CD to lab 08, and let's try TermTest. And it looks like it did before. There was no change here. But let's try my custom TermTest. So I'm going to set TermCap to my custom term, and now the lines all work. So it's not just the TermCap file, it's also the settings in your terminal emulation product have to work. And there are hundreds of terminals out there. There are hundreds, thousands probably, of terminal emulation software, and they all work kind of differently. Let me show you one more. I'm going to exit out of this. Windows 10 has a built-in SSH, and I just want to show you what that looks like to show that this is possible with the Windows built-in emulation. I apologize for the small font, but if I type SSH Lester at Tiger 6, this is using the Windows built-in terminal emulation. Again, I got to set my environment, CD to the Informix lab 08, and let's run TermTest. And it doesn't have the lines drawn quite right. Let's just see if it works with my TermCap. And it does. So different emulation software is going to work different ways. And you just got to explore and look for how to get the lines to draw, how to get the function keys to draw, and how to get everything to work. I hope this lab has helped you with that. Okay, now you've seen how it works on Windows as well as a Mac. So let me just go through a couple of sort of a summary of this chapter. The appearance of your 4GL program depends on two things. One is the TermCap file you're using, and two is the capabilities of your terminal, whether it's a terminal emulation software or a physical terminal. And there are hundreds of terminals out there, and they can all be different. Here are some resources for you to go look at. GNU has a lot of good information about TermCap and terminal definitions. IBM does in their docs, and Wikipedia does. You also want to get the manuals for your terminal. Google will be your friend here, because a lot of 30-year-old terminals, it's hard to get hard copies of the manuals. Again, to set the graphics capabilities, you're looking at the GS line, GS, GE, GB are the three things to set the graphics for your system. And they may be different depending on if you have a WISE 50. These are the ones I know work for Xterm. The ZA settings set your color. And again, this is one long line. This is what I've found works best for Xterm. I want to show you one other thing, a little problem that sometimes happens. I have my term set to, let's go over here. If I have it set to term X and I do a VI star.4GL, oh, VI worked. I didn't expect it to. Sometimes other utilities will not work when you have it set to, let's just see, CLE. Yeah, here's an example. I'm trying clear, and it says, I don't know your terminal type, so it can't clear the screen. So be very careful when you're changing it. You may get in a case where it doesn't work. Now, the third thing, I've covered colors and lines, is function keys. And function keys are actually the easiest part of this to debug. On most Linux systems, there is a command called show key -a. And so if I just type show key -a and I press a function key, I'm pressing F1, it gives me the characters that function key is sending. And this allows you to see what your function keys are. So then you can go put them in. And remember, F1, function key F1 is K0. And this allows you to put it here. Now, the escape E is escape. So it says send an escape OP. The control square bracket here is escape. And that's how you know that this is escape and the \E is an escape. If you don't have show key, another easy way to deal with finding out what your function keys are is octal dump -C. And so this is very raw mode. It's reading from the screen and it's going to do an octal dump. So I press function F1, function F2, function F3, function F4. It's reading what I'm pressing from the screen and displaying it in octal characters. That's two ways to debug your function keys. Sometimes what I found is you'll have a function key that just doesn't work. And so try this with show key and match it to what's in the TermCap file to see what works. I was working with a client once that had a function key that was not working, and it turns out they had another program that redefined that function key, so it would never work with Informix 4GL because that base program redefined it. So function keys can be interesting. So let me end with this. I hope this has helped you figure out how to make your 4GL screens look better. And thank you for attending.